You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Kurlop and Zeona McIntyre.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. I'm your host today, Zeona McIntyre, and unfortunately, Mr. Craig Kurlop is still out, so hopefully you guys are happy to be with me today. What is new in my life? Well, thank you for asking, Imaginary Craig. I am here in sunny Boulder, Colorado, and just enjoying this winter time. It is a new year and looking at new investments. I've been playing around with keeping up with the Joneses and trying to see if I can buy a bigger, better luxury house hack. But instead, this week, we decided to avoid that and stick with our smaller place that we are Airbnb-ing out just so conveniently and easily. We found out this year that in 2021, we made $40,000 on our Airbnb rental that we live in 6 months out of the year. And so if that's a hard thing to give up, we've decided that we're going to stick it out, do lots of pet sitting, continue to do lots of travel. And after all of our mortgage payments and everything, we still cash flowed $15,000. So if you're thinking that Airbnb house hacking is not something that could work out for you, well, you might be wrong. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it. So reach out to me. Instagram is the best way at Zeona McIntyre. I also have a website, ZeonaMcIntyre.com, if you want to reach out to me there. But let's get into today's episode. Today we have Martin Saenz. He is an investor out of Florida that has tried a lot of different types of investing. He started in the commercial space, which is actually not where most people start. We haven't talked about many commercial investors on the show, so you'll get a little taste of that. Then how he dabbled in residential and found that ideally for him, note investing was the best way. And I think note investing has a lot of interesting merits. So listen all the way to the end, and you might hear a bit about some offerings that he has and some books that he has written that might help you get into notes. So let's bring him on the show.
Martin Saenz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for
having me on. How you doing today?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm doing great.
Great. Well, we always start the show with the question, how did you first hear about financial independence? Can you tell us your story?
Sure. So I think it was after going to get my MBA, and that was in 2001. I had thought that was kind of the holy grail to get into corporate America and launch a career that way. And so what I found, though, after a few years in corporate America was it didn't meet my aspirations financially as well as spiritually. And so, from that point, I started self-educating myself on financial independence and, what it takes to obtain financial freedom for myself and my wife.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned spiritually. What was not fulfilling for you spiritually?
Sure. So I found, and this is just my personal experience, I found corporate America to be very draining emotionally, where you're doing a lot of activity to benefit others that are around you, not necessarily yourself, or delivering value to an end customer. And so I didn't feel like I was being of service the way I needed to be of service in life. And I'd say that, coupled with lots of conference calls and emails and everything else, and kind of being in that whole high pressure environment.
Yeah. Sometimes it just feels like busy work for busy work, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I also really appreciate that you mentioned how many people feel like an MBA is just kind of needed these days, right? And so what's different about a real estate investors is that very often we kind of come to the conclusion that, wow, everything we're doing, we actually didn't need to go to college for. And some people nowadays are actually skipping that step. So do you think that you would have done it that way again?
So I have a MBA and I have a master's in project management. And so I would have skipped both those steps for sure. And I would still stick with my philosophy degree, which was my undergrad. And so I like that because that helped me to think critically. And so it kind of gave me life skills that I was able to take along with me. But in terms of like an MBA where it gears you up to be a consultant or just a corporate individual, I could have definitely have done without that one.
Okay. Yeah. So if people are listening, there's another path. You don't have to go that way. So, okay. Well, you got this realization and you were in the corporate world. What did you do next? How did you kind of segue out of that?
Yeah. So, quit that job. And so from there, my wife and I went on a 1-year journey of just self-educating ourselves, going to seminars, reading books, and really setting ourselves up to be real estate investors. We had viewed real estate investing as the pathway to financial freedom. And what we found over the course of the year was that we needed to have a business of some sort that would provide ongoing cash flow that would allow us to move that into investing in real estate through buy and hold real estate investing. So that was really our game plan. We launched a federal contracting company in 2005, selling museum exhibits to the federal government primarily.
Oh, that seems very random. So, okay. How did you get this idea that real estate was going to be the way? Right? Because sometimes people have to see somebody else doing it that's in their family or in their network. And then sometimes maybe they stumble upon, like you said, maybe you went to a seminar or read a book. So where did that kind of light bulb moment happen for you?
Sure. My wife had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So we kind of started with that as our foundation. But it seemed like everyone I had read about or read biographies on, successful business owners, successful business leaders, they all seem to have real estate holdings. And they made a lot of their money through real estate. So it just seemed logical that, we would have to go down the real estate road.
Okay. So you have this business in 2005. Where did you start with the real estate? Like when did you do your first deal?
Yeah. So, started in 2005, we spent 3 years, 3 years just kind of sucking wind, getting the company off the ground and digging ourselves into large amounts of debt to the tune of $225K of credit card debt. And then digging ourselves out of that hole. And so, after year 4 came, we started obtaining federal contracts with the Pentagon and other military and federal installations. And, come 2009, we were ready to move out of our home into our own building. So I searched Craigslist for properties to buy. I stumbled across a building that was for sale in our area that we lived in at the time. And the owner wanted to sell it with owner financing and 10% down. So we kind of, we met with him at a Starbucks and he was asking for $310,000, which was very cheap at the time. And I had offered $300,000 and he about jumped out of his seat in excitement. And so my wife still razzes me about that negotiation experience to this day.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about, did you say it was a building or what was the setup of this place that you were going to buy?
Industrial space, a 2,400 square foot.
Okay. So you were buying commercial space and you
Mhm.
found an owner financing deal. So did he have the terms laid out up front, or was that something that you had to negotiate all the pieces?
No, the terms were already laid out. He actually laid them out in Craigslist. And so what's interesting is I'm selling that space now and I'm closing in 60 days on it for 780K. But what's fascinating is that, he couldn't sell the space in 2009. And now this is the only industrial space in the whole city that's available. And so it's just kind of the turn of events. But what he required was 15-year term with no prepayment. So this is his IRA annuity game plan for himself into retirement. He didn't want anyone to pay it off. And interest was 6%. So that was fine for us.
Okay. Well, it hasn't been quite 15 years. So what are you doing with that now? Are you going to just continue to make the payments even though you would have sold it?
No, I'm going to pay him in full because right now a majority of the payment is going towards principal anyway. So the amount that I'm going to pay in excess of interest to close him out for the 15-year point is not significant.
Okay, great. So how did you utilize that space where it felt like a true investment? I mean, you did hold it, but you were using it yourself, or were you renting out certain parts of it?
So we used it all for our company, our exhibit company, and then we bought a neighboring space from him a month later under the same terms, and so that was kind of and we rented out that neighboring space. We wanted that in case we were going to grow into it, and we actually did that same model in a few other cases, buying commercial property with owners that just wanted to sell with seller financing.
Great. Well, I want to just point out two really valuable parts of this story. Number one, that you found this on Craigslist. I think sometimes people think, oh my gosh, finding deals is impossible. I'm going to have to put signs in yards and mail everybody in the city and all this stuff. But like sometimes you can just go to Craigslist and you can find deals. So I think, maybe that's not somebody's direct way to go, that they're going to make 100 calls a day or that they're good at direct mail, but maybe just try the things that are easy, the low hanging fruit, and see if something comes. So Craigslist can still be a really great resource. And then,
if you think about it, some people, they may be 70 years old and Craigslist is doable for them. Like Facebook would be too high tech to list it on Facebook or, so that's just their thing. They go to Craigslist for things. So that's just what they're used to. And that's where they'll post their property.
Absolutely. And the second thing that you mentioned is that you had a good relationship with this person. And so even though your wife likes to razz you that you weren't really doing a great negotiation deal.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had negotiated too hard, you would have felt a little bit of bad blood with this person and he might not have wanted to sell you the next place. So sometimes keeping that relationship is really valuable. So you can go back and tell her that tonight.
Yeah, you can be my spokesperson. That's what I'm like, wow, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, but
I just agree
investors, with her. Totally. Investors tend to own more than one property, right? So sometimes it's great to keep these relationships and check back in with them and say, hey, if you're older and you're divesting, what else do you have? So I think it's really cool that you were able to keep that relationship. So tell us a bit about this deal number 2. How did that one go?
Oh, deal number 2 was same type of property, same terms. So everything was already negotiated out. He wanted to sell that as well. And so once we got the first one, we got kind of the taste of it. We're like, we just need to be doing this on a larger level.
Great. So it was about $300K, 10% down, owner finance, 15 years. Now, did you guys need the extra space or did you rent the space out?
We rented it out because that was really our objective, was to obtain our first rental property. And so that served, even though the building we occupied for our business was considered a rental as well, because the business paid, rent to another LLC for it. But still, just to start like kind of proof of concept, solidify the mindset of a real estate investor.
Yeah. So at this time, you're saying he was having a hard time selling these places, right? So I'm assuming maybe the rental market wasn't that high. Did you have trouble getting somebody who wanted to lease the space?
No, actually, we bought it with a tenant in place already.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Yeah, it was tenant occupied.
Okay, so let's go into those numbers a little bit. Do you remember roughly what your payment was to him and kind of what that tenant was paying?
Yeah, absolutely. Payment to is about 2404, and rental income was right about 2000. So we've been under on both properties actually the whole duration. And that's intentional because we wanted a 15-year term. We wanted to pay it off. And the idea was to pay it off and then sell it with seller financing after we owned it free and clear. But we're just selling it out right now instead.
So it's been 12 years. Have you been raising the rent over this time, or do you just kind of let it go?
Yeah. So we've been in one of the spaces. It's one of the spaces been vacant because we wanted to sell it. But yeah, one space collects 2,000 a month, and the other space was collecting 2,400 a month. So just kind of covering the nut.
Okay. Interesting. So I don't know much about commercial. So I'm curious if you could go in a little bit on the due diligence that you did. So I imagine that the leases, they have a little more responsibility than a normal, like I would say, like someone who's living in the house, right? We're responsible to keep it all up. But when somebody is renting it for a business, sometimes they build out and do some modifications. So how much maintenance and things like that did you have to keep up with?
Maintenance has almost been nil for the whole duration of time. It's industrial spaces are so low maintenance. It's unreal because it's just block wall. And if there's a kitchenette area, it's just cheap laminate. And these are industrial type properties, leased to electrical companies and construction companies and so forth. So what's interesting is that we own some single family rentals as well. But with single family rentals, you have a family living there beating the heck out of the property 24/7, 7 days a week. But in industrial spaces, someone's only occupying it 40 hours out of the week. And two spaces we own, churches are occupying those spaces. So those churches only meet up Sunday, one day out of the week. So there's very low wear and tear. Plus you got the block walls and everything else. So it's very low maintenance. Okay.
Well, that's interesting. So you have these two properties, you're selling one for $780. Are you planning to sell that other one too? Or are you just going to keep holding it?
I'm going to hold. I've been selling. We moved to Sarasota, Florida from the DC area, and those properties are in the DC area. So we've been kind of slowly liquidating that portfolio because we're starting to buy properties here in Florida.
Great. Yeah. Florida has a lot of appreciation potential.
Yes.
Well, cool. So you started with commercial. At what point did you kind of change your strategy and go a little more residential?
Right about 2011, I think we bought our first residential property. The idea was that we started doing very well with the government contracting company. So we were adhering to the rule of thumb where, you make money, and instead of just wasting it on a boat or something like that, you go out and you buy property and you just accumulate a portfolio of property. So that's what we did. Every time we had some money in the bank, we went out and bought a property, whether it was residential or commercial. And fast forward a few years, 2013, we sold the federal contracting company, and the person we sold it to became a tenant in our building. So that was kind of a transition point where I moved into mortgage note investing.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, keeping kind of like the high level view, we're still working towards this idea of financial independence. And so far, with the stuff that you had bought, you did have a business that you were working on. And so I imagine you were living off that business. These other two properties were really just kind of breaking even or a little bit underwater. So at what point now you're selling this business? And so you're going to maybe have a nest egg, but you need something that's bringing in regular income, right? So what was kind of that strategy that you changed into?
Correct. So I'll answer that. I just want to say, like with small business ownership, and perhaps it was the way that we ran the business, we were putting in 100-hour work weeks. So we found that with small business ownership, we weren't obtaining freedom of time. We were, we did well financially, but we were very much trapped in the business. And what we found with a slow building of real estate portfolio is we found a great annuity play that's been very lucrative for us, throughout the years. But it didn't meet our financial aspirations in terms of monthly cash flow that we wanted to see coming into us on a passive level. So we didn't find it with small business. We didn't find it with buy and hold real estate investing. So when we sold the company in 2013, I was on a mission to do something that was grand, where I could be of service to a great number of people, and also build financial independence through building multiple streams of income on a passive level for me and my family. And that's when we stumbled upon note investing.
Okay, great. Yeah, I only know just a little bit about note investing. I have a friend who does a little bit of it. So could you tell us a little, like, what is note investing for the people that are listening and may not have heard of it before?
Sure. So what mortgage note investing is if you take a homeowner or a borrower at the time and they go into a bank and they want to buy a home, they do the mortgage loan application. And if everything's approved, then a mortgage loan is originated. And what's created is a promissory note, which means the borrower is going to, take this money and they're going to pay it back given these certain set of terms. And then there's a mortgage or deed of trust that ties that promise to the property in the form of collateral. Now, what happens about 4% of the time is mortgages go into default. The homeowner stops making their payment, normally due to divorce, loss of job, a health issue. And so the bank will try to do what they can do to get the loan reinstated or back on track. But over time, that bank will probably bundle those defaulted mortgages into tranches and sell them for a discount to a hedge fund in the secondary mortgage market. And so we operate a hedge fund and have been for the past 9 years that buys those mortgages at a discount. Now, initially, I just thought, well, it's a great addition because, I know what I'm doing on the real estate front. I can make a lot of money obtaining properties at a discount. So that was kind of my initial thought. But what I found over the course of the first year of mortgage note investing was that I could build the mission for the organization as such that we can help homeowners stay in their home by giving them a loan modification that they can afford while making a long-term cash flow stream for myself and my company. So that's what we made as our business model.
Okay. So how do you make it more affordable for people? Are you pulling the loans out to be 50 years or something like that?
Well, when you purchase the mortgage loans, you assume all the rights and responsibilities of the original lender. Yeah. So if we buy $100,000 mortgage loan for $40,000, then we have some flexibility to work with the principal balance, to work with the interest rate, to work with the duration, to go and help them back on their feet with the payment plan. And that they can afford. Because if you're not giving the homeowner a payment plan they can afford, then it's not going to be sustainable. and they're going to go back into default. So it's your advantage as a business to try to create that win-win.
Great. So for people that don't operate a hedge fund, right? Like they may not have those kinds of resources. How can somebody get into note investing on their own?
So I've written 3 books on mortgage note investing. And so I just say go to Amazon, punch in mortgage note or punch in note investing. You'll see myself come up there. I wrote a best-selling book, Note Investing Made Easier. And and so I just kind of give a lot of my day-to-day. I give my business model away for anyone that's looking to launch a note investing business for themselves.
Great. So what are some of those advantages of note investing? I've heard that people can buy those notes from certain brokers. And so maybe if you find a place that feels safe, you can kind of continue to work through that same channel. And then I've also heard that some of the interest rates can be really good, maybe depending on how secure or what their history has been, or maybe their credit rating. But I've heard with note investing, it can be close to 16% on some deals. So kind of what are those perks that make it so that people want to do this?
Yeah, so it's not as much about the coupon rate that the homeowner's paying because you're buying it at a discount. So even if there's a coupon rate after the loan modification at 6%, if you're buying a $100,000 mortgage at $40,000, you're going to do well from an IRR perspective. What I would say is that in terms of like ways of operating, there are a number of different philosophies, but I advocate always building relationships with other hedge funds and sellers that where you can buy from them on an ongoing basis. And that's how we trade right now. A majority of our trades are negotiated trades that never see the market. And so we've built that reputation amongst sellers as being reliable, good to our word, always closing, never reneging. And so you kind of build that reputation. Plus, we know what we're doing. So we're going to close fast with sellers. So it's kind of building your reputation while you're developing those relationships with the selling partners.
Okay. So since you've transitioned to note investing, have you basically left all the other real estate investing in the dust? Are you just like, well, this is so much easier for me, I'm going to not do commercial and not do residential as much?
Actually, interestingly enough, we because of the books that are out there and some of the podcasts I do, I have a lot of people that reach out to me on a weekly basis. And so what my partner and I decided to do 2 years ago was we were hearing from so many people that wanted to participate in note investing, kind of be a part of the profits and the social good behind it, but didn't want to launch a full-scale business for themselves. We decided to open up an income fund called BeQuest Funds, where we offer a 9% annual pref paid to the investor monthly. And so it's a 506 Reg D income fund for accredited investors. So now we're starting to take on investor payments versus our hedge fund, which buys the non-performing loans at discounts. That's just owned by my partner and myself with no investors. Now the income fund purchases performing mortgages that are seasoned and performing from the same secondary mortgage marketplace. But to answer your question, we're launching another fund this year that's going to focus on commercial real estate property. So versus kind of being the mom and pop real estate investor, which I've been up to this point, is going to be now more structured, and the acquisitions are going to be much larger.
Great. So I just kind of want to smooth over some of the jargon because I think there's a lot of terms in there that people might not know if they're new to these ideas, right? So it is almost like a syndication. It sounds like your second deal is going to be a bit of a syndication where you might be buying a couple of real estate properties that are commercial and putting it all together and pooling people's funds. And so it sounds like with your fund that you've got that's note investing, you're pooling a bunch of investors together to buy more funds so that you can make it just a lot of different mortgages in there, right? And so when you say 9% preferred,
yes.
Well, I just want to make sure people understand. So 9% preferred, that means that any profit that you guys make, you are paying the investors first. And so that's that 9%. Now, is there another kind of deal at the end that sometimes with these syndications, there's a preferred payment. And then if there's more money made by selling or improving the property, then they get another payment out later. But with a mortgage, it's a pretty predictable history. So I don't know if that would be changing.
Correct. Yes. What you're referring to on the back end is a waterfall. So there's no waterfall feature to the income fund. What the income fund is set up to do is be a very conservative vehicle where someone can earn a predictable, consistent return of 9%, or they can let it compound at 9.38%. And receive monthly income. So it's very much about the monthly income to hedge against inflation and to provide people with just additional money, monthly that's what I'm very passionate about. We launched BeQuest Funds as a friends and family fund initially. So we didn't even promote it for the first year. I put in $800K. My partner put in a bunch of money. So we were just making it an annuity play because it's set up as an evergreen fund with no expiration. So we just set it up as something to pass down to our children. But then we decided to open it up to more of the investor community outside our network last year. And we raised 10 million from outside investors last year to grow the fund, and it caps out at 50 million. So next 2 years, it should wrap up.
Okay, great. So yeah, when you say evergreen, I was thinking that maybe it was just on forever and ever. So how would people get out? But you do have a term length of time. And so we have a few different classes. Like there's a class, class B provides an 8% annual preferred return. That's a 1-year commitment. Class C is a 9-year annual preferred return, comes with a 4-year commitment. And then we have a 6% pref option that comes with a 6-month commitment. So it's more liquidity on that front. So we kind of give different options based on where people are at. But when they invest in BeQuest, they're actually equity stakeholders in the company. So even though they're getting paid out like a debt structure where they're getting monthly income, we wanted to give people the ownership feature for the investment, and they're owners of the whole portfolio, not just what they invested in or the trade that we used their funds to buy. Okay, great. Well, we have to transition into the final part of our show, but is there any final words of wisdom you want to share with the listeners or anything that you want to make sure that they understand before we transition?
Yeah, I would just say, like, wherever you're at in life, you're working a good job or you're looking to be an entrepreneur or you're looking to be a professional investor. The focus should be on multiple streams of income that are coming to you on a monthly basis, whether it's active streams or passive streams. Obviously, you got to start with active before you get to passive, but at some point you should be transitioning more of the active income into passive income, or growing both. Why not? But invest in assets that you have some control over, or the operators, and invest in assets that provide monthly cash flow. And don't be disillusioned with all the things that are out there that are just appreciation plays, because they're going to bite you in the end.
That's good advice, especially now, because we don't really know where appreciations are going. So yeah, yes. Great.
The final four.
All right. So let's transition into the final part of the show. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Question number 1, what are you reading right now?
Capital Attraction by Matt Burke.
Okay. What is that?
So it's on just strategies for raising capital for a real estate type fund.
Okay, great. So yeah, you're doing your homework, right? Getting yourself ready. All right. So number 2, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I would say invest in assets that you can control in the cash flow, just to reiterate what I said before.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because if somebody invests in a fund or a syndication, they don't have control, right? They're relinquishing that to you. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to that?
I would say the relationship needs to be in place. So you need to have access to the operator. You need to do your due diligence on them, background checks, verifying with other investors that have invested with that person. So even though you don't have control per se, you can have controls in place to ensure that you're monitoring that operator on an ongoing basis. In a positive way.
Yep, that's great. And number 3, what is your why?
The most impactful thing for me in my life that brings me joy is that my wife and our 4 children have never had to think about money for the past 10 years. Not one second of one day they've had to think about money.
Wow. Well, not many people can say that. So that's pretty powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Question number 4, if you could go back and change any of the decisions that you've made on your path, what would you do differently?
Not slow roll it. So initially I grew slow because I self-funded my whole operation for the first 4 years. I would have hired employees right out of the gate. I would have taken investor dollars right out of the gate after I knew what I was doing, of course, and I would have grown it in more grand way out of the gate.
Okay. Well, I think everybody tends to say I would have started sooner, and so that's kind of a little bit of that. Yeah, great. Well, if anybody wants to get a hold of you after this, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. They can email me at martin@bqfunds.com or visit the website at bqfunds.com. And you can email me about, any questions you have. It doesn't have to be, investment into BeQuest or any of that. I'm an educator at heart. I love helping people. I think it's epidemic in this country, where people don't have enough streams of income coming in to their lives to support their families. So I'm very passionate about helping people that way.
That's so great. Well, I hope people do reach out to you. I think this is a great avenue for some people that are wanting to be a little more passive and just take their income and make a really great return. So thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge today on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. We'll see you again. Thanks so much.
Yes.
And that was Martin Saenz. Thank you, everybody, for listening all the way to the end. I think there were some great nuggets in there about note investing. And so you can definitely reach out to Martin if you're interested in getting into one of his funds. 9% return is better than most people are doing in the stock market. I know recently the stock market has gone up a lot in these last few years, but that is probably not going to continue. So it is nice to find places where we can take our newfound money and keep it secure. So maybe looking into a fund will be good for you. As always, we love it if you can leave us a review or a comment, share this show with your friends. We are always trying to build and help more people. You can always reach out to Craig or I. Craig is not here this week, but he is at The Fi Guy, and I'm at Zeona McIntyre on all the social channels. And we would love to hear from you. So we will see you next week. Thanks so much.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.